My sisters and brothers, imagine standing at the edge of your greatest fear, staring at a wall so high it looks impossible to climb, facing a storm so fierce it feels impossible to survive. Yet history is filled with people just like you who were told it can't be done, but they proved the world wrong. They rose when everyone expected them to fall. They walked through doors that were never supposed to open, and they achieved what once seemed unthinkable. If the impossible happened for them, then who told you it cannot happen for you? Stay with me, because today I will show you how the impossible actually happens. And sometimes, my brothers and sisters, the most powerful reminders of how the impossible happens are hidden in the smallest moments of our lives. Think about the times when you were at your lowest point, when your heart was heavy and your tears seemed endless. You thought you could never smile again, never feel at peace, never rise above that crushing weight. Yet with time, with patience, and with the help of the Almighty, you found yourself standing again. You began to smile, you began to heal, you began to feel hope once more. That is the impossible becoming possible, but because it happened so quietly, so naturally, you may not have even realized how profound it was. The truth is, many of us are waiting for a massive miracle, a dramatic change, a moment that shakes the earth beneath our feet. But in reality, the impossible is happening in subtle ways every single day. The fact that you woke up this morning when so many did not is a miracle. The fact that your body functions in harmony, that your heart beats without your command, that your lungs breathe without your effort, these are impossibilities made possible for you at every moment. If we opened our eyes to these daily reminders, our faith would grow, our gratitude would deepen, and our hearts woo. Find tranquility even in the middle of storms. And let us not forget that every difficulty carries within it the seeds of possibility. When you are struck with hardship, you might think it is the end, but in reality, it is the beginning of transformation. A person who loses everything may discover strength they never knew they had. Someone who faces rejection may end up finding a path that is far greater than the one they originally sought. The impossible happens when you realize that setbacks are not the closing of your story, but the shaping of a better chapter that you never imagined. There is wisdom in every delay, and there is purpose in every challenge. If everything you wished for happened immediately, you would never experience growth. You would never taste the sweetness of victory after hardship. You would never learn the patience, resilience, and humility that come only through struggle. So when life pushes you to the ground and you think you cannot rise again, remind yourself that it is often from the ground that seeds sprout into mighty trees. What you thought was the end could actually be the very foundation of your rise. Consider the lives of those who inspired the world. Many of them began with nothing. Some were told they were failures. Others were mocked for their dreams. Some were left abandoned by society. Yet they rose. They refused to give up. They kept walking even when the road was full of thorns. And eventually they achieved what everyone else thought was beyond reach. People later called them extraordinary, but in truth, they were ordinary individuals who trusted in the extraordinary power of perseverance and faith. If they could witness the impossible in their lives, what is stopping you from witnessing the same in yours? You see, the problem is not that things are impossible. The problem is that our vision is limited. We only see what is directly in front of us, but the Almighty sees the entire picture. He knows what is coming. He knows what is best. And often what looks like an obstacle in your path is actually a protection from something harmful. What feels like a delay may be a preparation for something greater. What appears to be a loss may be the clearing of space for something better to enter your life. The impossible unfolds when you surrender to that wisdom, when you trust that your story is being written with care, even when you do not understand it. My brothers and sisters, when people say it cannot be done, what they are really saying is that they cannot see how it will be done. But just because you cannot see it does not mean it cannot happen. The rain falls from the sky, though the sky holds no rivers. The earth produces fruit, though the seed was buried in darkness. The heart beats, though no one winds it up. All of this is a sign that possibilities are far greater than our limited perception. Sometimes the impossible happens not by changing the world around you, but by changing you from within. A person who once lived in anger can suddenly become calm and compassionate. A person who was consumed by greed can suddenly become generous. A person who was drowning in despair can suddenly find peace. These are transformations that prove the greatest impossibilities often lie within ourselves. Do not underestimate how much you can change when you truly commit to growth, when you sincerely turn to your Creator, and when you refuse to be defined by your past. And remember, the impossible does not mean effortless. It requires work. It requires sacrifice. It requires a willingness to keep going when you are exhausted. Too many people give up right before their breakthrough. They say, I tried, but nothing is working. Yet they do not realize that they stopped at the very doorstep of success. What they thought was failure was actually the final test before the opening of doors. This is why perseverance is so vital. Even if you do not see results today, keep moving. Even if the world tells you it cannot happen, keep believing. Even if you feel small, weak, or unworthy, keep striving. Because the moment you decide to give up may be the moment the impossible was about to unfold. The impossible becomes possible when you surround yourself with hope instead of despair, with positivity instead of negativity, with people who lift you up instead of those who pull you down. Choose carefully who you listen to, because the voices around you shape the voice inside you. If you only listen to those who say you cannot, then you will begin to believe that you cannot. But if you listen to those who say you can, who remind you of the power of faith and effort, then your heart will be strengthened and your steps will be firm. Do not compare your journey to others. Sometimes the impossible happens for someone else before it happens for you, and that can make you feel left behind. But every story is unique. Every path is different. The delay in your life is not a denial. It is simply a preparation for the right time. Trust that your moment will come. Trust that your impossible will one day unfold in a way that is perfect for you. When you witness others achieving what you long for, instead of feeling envy, let it be proof that it is possible. Let it inspire you. Let it remind you that if it can happen for them, it can happen for you too, in your own way and in your own time. The world is vast, the possibilities are endless, and the mercy of the Almighty knows no bounds. So rise every day with the belief that no matter how dark the night, the sun will rise. No matter how heavy the burden, relief will come. No matter how impossible it seems, the door will open. And when it does, you will look back at all the nights you cried, all the moments you nearly gave up, all the times you thought it was over. And you will realize that every single one of those moments was preparing you for this. The impossible was always written for you. It was just waiting for the right moment to appear. And the beauty, my brothers and sisters, is that when the impossible finally happens, it humbles you. You realize that it was never about your strength alone, never about your wisdom alone, never about your effort alone. It was always about the one who guided you, the one who opened the path, the one who placed the right people, the right circumstances, the right opportunities at the right time. You begin to see life differently. You no longer despair when challenges come your way, because you know that the same power that carried you before can carry you again. You no longer fear the unknown, because you know that unseen forces are working in your favor. You no longer think of yourself as helpless, because you have already witnessed how impossibility can turn into reality. And in this realization, you discover gratitude. Gratitude for every hardship that made you stronger. Gratitude for every delay that prepared you. Gratitude for every tear that softened your heart. Gratitude for every door that closed, because it pushed you towards a better one. Gratitude transforms the way you see your journey. Instead of focusing only on what you do not have, you begin to appreciate the countless blessings already surrounding you. And when gratitude fills your heart, it attracts more blessings, more openings, more impossibilities turned into possibilities. Many people live in their lives believing that great things are reserved for others, that miracles are only for special people, that breakthroughs are only for the fortunate. But the truth is, every single one of us is capable of experiencing what seems impossible. The key is to align yourself with determination, sincerity, effort, and faith. If you are willing to keep trying, if you are willing to keep believing, if you are willing to keep calling out to the Almighty, then your story will also carry moments where you look back in awe and say, I never thought I would get through that, but I did. Think about those who once thought they would never escape poverty, yet today they are helping others. Think about those who once thought they would never find peace, yet today they are smiling with contentment. Think about those who once thought they would never heal from their wounds, yet today they are stronger than ever. Every one of these stories is a reminder that impossibility is not permanent. It is just a perception, and perceptions can change in an instant when the Almighty wills. At times, what seems impossible is actually the protection of the Almighty. A door you desperately wanted to open may have led you to harm. A relationship you prayed for may have been destructive. A dream you chased may have destroyed your peace. And so what you thought was an impossible barrier was actually divine mercy shielding you from something you did not see. When you reflect on your past, you will notice how many things you once cried for would have been disasters if they were given to you. That is why trust is so essential. Trust that even when things do not make sense, there is wisdom. Trust that even when you are hurting, there is healing on its way. Trust that even when you do not understand, you are being guided. Sometimes the impossible happens not all at once, but step by step. You may not notice it in the moment. You may feel like nothing is changing. But then you look back months later and you realize how far you have come. You realize that what once felt unbearable is now a memory. You realize that what once seemed hopeless is now behind you. And you wonder, how did I make it through? The answer is simple. You were carried through. You were never alone. You were being prepared. And every step, no matter how small, was part of the unfolding of the impossible. You see, there is something incredibly powerful about resilience. Resilience is when you keep getting up, no matter how many times you fall. Resilience is when you refuse to let failure define you. Resilience is when you keep knocking on the door even after being turned away 100 times. And resilience is often the difference between those who see the impossible become possible and those who never do. Because resilience proves that you are serious, that you are committed, that you will not give up until you reach your destination. We often admire the final result of others, their success, their peace, their achievements, but we forget the years of resilience behind their story. We forget the nights of prayer, the days of struggle, the sacrifices, the patience, the tears. The impossible did not just happen overnight. It happened because they refused to surrender, because they believed in something greater, because they knew that persistence eventually pays off. And the same is true for you. If you remain steadfast, if you keep striving, if you refuse to let setbacks break you, then your impossible will one day become possible. And when it does, you will realize that it was never just about you. It was about those around you who will be inspired by your journey. It was about those who will find hope through your story. It was about those who will look at your victory and say, if they could do it, then maybe I can too. Sometimes the impossible happens in your life so that it can light the way for others. Your struggle becomes their lesson. Your breakthrough becomes their encouragement. Your story becomes their motivation. My brothers and sisters, the impossible teaches us humility. It reminds us that we are not in control of everything. It teaches us patience, because without waiting, you never experience the sweetness of relief. It teaches us faith, because without trust in the unseen, you never discover the power of the Almighty. And it teaches us gratitude, because once the impossible becomes reality, you cannot help but fall in awe at how it all unfolded. Do not let your current pain convince you that relief is impossible. Do not let your current failure convince you that success is impossible. Do not let your current weakness convince you that strength is impossible. These are lies that despair whispers to your heart. Replace them with the truth that countless people before you have been where you are, and they emerged victorious. Replace them with the truth that the Almighty has brought you through hardships before, and He can do it again. Replace them with the truth that you are stronger than you realize, and you are never alone in your journey. The impossible is not meant to break you. It is meant to shape you. It pushes you to discover your potential. It forces you to rely on your Creator. It humbles you, strengthens you, and teaches you to see beyond your own limited view. And when you finally come out on the other side, you do not just carry the joy of victory, you carry the wisdom, the strength, and the gratitude that make you a better person than you were before. And so every time you are faced with something that feels impossible, remind yourself of all the impossibilities that have already happened in your life. Let those memories fuel your faith. Let them strengthen your resolve. Let them remind you that just because you cannot see the way right now does not mean the way does not exist. Keep moving forward. Keep believing. Keep striving, because the story of your life is not finished yet. And the chapter of the impossible turning into possible is still being written. And when you begin to understand this, my brothers and sisters, you stop underestimating yourself. You stop saying, I can't, and you replace it with the help of the Almighty, I can. You stop convincing yourself that you are too weak, too broken, too unworthy, and instead you remind yourself that strength does not come from you alone. It comes from the one who placed you on this earth with a purpose, the one who never burdens a soul with more than it can bear, the one who knows the hidden strengths you have yet to discover. That is why when you are placed in a situation you thought you could never survive, you surprise yourself. You find a strength that was buried deep inside you. You find courage you never knew you had. And that is when the impossible begins to unfold. There are moments in life where you feel like the world is closing in on you. You feel suffocated by responsibilities, by fears, by disappointments. You look around and see no way out. But if you pause, if you take a deep breath, if you remind yourself that every trial comes with its relief, you begin to notice the small cracks where the light enters. you begin to notice how opportunities appear in the most unexpected places. You begin to notice how the people you never expected to support you suddenly show up. These are not coincidences. These are reminders that the impossible is close. Than you think. Sometimes the impossible looks like forgiveness. You may carry wounds so deep that you believe you will never heal, you will never forgive, you will never move on. But when you sincerely seek peace, when you turn to the Almighty to soften your heart, suddenly you find yourself letting go of grudges that once seemed unshakable. You find yourself smiling at someone you thought you would never speak to again. You find yourself sleeping peacefully at night instead of carrying heavy bitterness. That is also how the impossible happens. When hearts that were once hard are softened, when relationships that were once broken are mended, when hatred that seemed permanent is replaced with mercy. Other times, the impossible looks like transformation. A person who was once drowning in bad habits, who thought they would never change, suddenly finds themselves on a new path. Slowly, step by step, they leave behind the very things they thought they could never escape. At first, it seems like a battle too big to win. But with sincerity, with patience, with reliance on the Almighty, the impossible becomes reality. And one day they look back and wonder how they ever lived the way they once did. This is proof that no one should ever think they are beyond redemption. No one should ever say, I can't change. Change is possible no matter how far you have gone, no matter how long you have struggled, no matter how deep you have fallen. The impossible is possible because the one who created you is the one who can remake you. Sometimes the impossible is hidden in the journey of patience. You might pray for something and wait years without an answer. You might cry night after night, wondering why your prayers seem unheard. But the reality is that every prayer is heard, every tear is counted, every sigh is known. The delay is not neglect. The delay is preparation. The delay is protection. And when the answer finally comes, when the impossible suddenly happens, you realize why you had to wait. You realize that the timing was perfect. You realize that what you received was far better than what you once begged for. That is why patience is so powerful. It transforms waiting into growth and turns delays into blessings. My brothers and sisters, think about how often we assume that our weakness disqualifies us. We look at others and say, they are stronger, they are smarter, they are more deserving. But the truth is, every single person who achieved something extraordinary once doubted themselves too. They too felt fear. They too felt unworthy. They too faced rejection. The difference is that they did not let those feelings stop them. They pressed forward despite the fear. They stood tall despite the doubt. And in doing so, they unlocked the reality that seemed unreachable. This is why courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite fear. The impossible becomes possible when you stop waiting to feel ready and you start moving with trust. You may not feel strong enough. You may not feel prepared, but take the first step anyway. Take it with trembling hands. Take it with a racing heart, but take it. Because once you take that step, you prove to yourself that fear is not in control. You are. And step by step, the path that once seemed impossible begins to open before your very eyes. And remember, sometimes the impossible does not happen in the way you imagined. You may pray for one thing, but the Almighty grants you something entirely different. Something you never thought to ask for. Something you never imagined you needed. Later, when you look back, you realize that it was exactly what you required. This teaches you that the impossible is not about bending reality to your will, but about aligning your will with the one who knows what is best for you. And when you surrender in that way, you find peace even when the answer looks different than what you expected. The impossible is also about perspective. Two people can face the same difficulty. One sees only despair, the other sees hidden opportunity. The situation may be identical, but the outcome is worlds apart. Because one chose to see through the lens of faith, while the other chose to see through the lens of fear. If you shift your perspective, if you remind yourself that even in hardship there is goodness, you begin to notice doors you never saw before. And that change in perspective is often the very thing that makes the impossible possible. My brothers and sisters, every storm eventually passes. Every night eventually gives way to dawn. Every wound eventually begins to heal. That is the natural law of life. But when you are inside the storm, it feels endless. When you are walking through the night, it feels eternal. When you are nursing the wound, it feels unbearable. This is why reminders are so important, to remind yourself that nothing remains forever except the mercy of the Almighty. Your pain will not last forever. Your struggle will not last forever. Your night will not last forever. And when it lifts, you will see how much you have grown, how much stronger you have become, how much wisdom you have gained. That growth, that strength, that wisdom, that is the impossible that was happening all along, quietly shaping you while you were waiting for relief. And never forget that what seems impossible to you might be effortless for the Almighty. What you see as a mountain too high to climb, He can flatten with ease. What you see as a sea too deep to cross, He can part in a moment. What you see as a heart too broken to heal, He can mend with one touch of His mercy. So never measure your challenges against your own strength alone. Measure them against the limitless power of the one who created strength itself. When you do that, your burdens feel lighter, your fears feel smaller, and your hope feels stronger. So when life whispers to you, it cannot be done, respond with conviction. It can if He wills. When your own mind says you are not enough, remind yourself, I am not alone. When your circumstances scream, it's over, remind yourself, it is not over until the Almighty decides. This mindset will carry you through the hardest days. It will keep you standing when others fall. It will keep you believing when others give up. And eventually, it will allow you to witness with your own eyes what once seemed impossible unfolding right in front of you. And when that moment comes, you will not just rejoice for yourself. You will become a source of hope for others. You will look into the eyes of someone going through what you once endured, and you will say with certainty, I know it seems impossible now, but trust me, it is not. And that reassurance may be the very thing that gives them the strength to keep going. In this way, your impossible becomes not just your miracle, but a miracle for others as well.